You're listening to Thrive in the Word, and we're so thankful that you've decided to listen to this video. Now, we're studying through the book of 2 Peter, and we're in the first chapter, verse number 7 today. Now, let me encourage you to go back and listen to the prior videos because we're teaching verse by verse through this wonderful book. And these videos, they're only about 8 minutes long. And you know what? Go back and catch up if you haven't been listening, because this thing is building. And if you don't understand all the things that have been said, then you're going to miss out on the interpretation and the real meaning of what Peter is saying. You know, one of the things that I see in the church is people pick out verses and they pick it out of context and they pick it out here and they pick it out there and they just talk about just one verse of the Bible. And you know what? That's really dangerous. But not only is it dangerous, but you don't get the full impact of what the person is writing. Now, if I were to sit down and write to you a personal letter, you know, and you just read one paragraph, you know what? That one paragraph, maybe it would bless you. And maybe it would be something that you would like to think about and meditate on. But if you would read the whole letter from beginning to end, you would get the whole gist of what's being said in that letter. And so I want to encourage you, begin to read the Bible and the books of the Bible like they're a letter, especially the epistles of the New Testament. Read the whole thing. You know, one of the things that I do when I sit down and do a study of one of the epistles in the Bible is I read the whole thing in one setting. I read the whole thing. I don't just read a couple verses here and a couple verses there. I read the whole thing, and I listen to the whole thing. And when I say I listen, I don't do audio Bibles. I take to heart the whole thing, and it takes hours and hours to do it. So I want to encourage you to get the whole gist of what Peter is saying. Now, I want to just remind you that Peter is facing his own execution. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever been with a person that knows that they're dying and that you're just wanting to get those last words that they're going to say to you? Well, that's exactly what 2 Peter is. Peter is in love with the church, especially the Jewish church. He's been called by Jesus to pastor the Jewish church. And now he is just writing these last words out of such urgency and out of such compassion. So again, I encourage you to go and listen to these podcasts. So go back and catch yourself up if you're just starting. Now we're in 2 Peter, the first chapter, verse number 7, and it says, "And in your godliness, brotherly kindness." I believe that the reason why he says brotherly kindness here is because godliness in itself can sometimes appear to be very harsh when it comes in relationship to other people. Now, I've been in ministry 45 years and been a believer for over 50 years. And you know what? I've run into all kinds of people. But there's been times where I've run into godly people that really stress holiness. And you know what I found? That those holy people are usually the most unloving people. Why? Because they haven't added to their holiness brotherly kindness. Now, this word brotherly kindness in the Greek language is the Greek word Philadelphia, and it just means brotherly love. It means a deep and abiding affection for something. And we use it as brotherly love, but what Peter is saying here is that to our godliness, we need to be affectionate towards others. We need to have an affection on the inside of us. You see, that affection tempers us. It makes us effective in reaching other people. And so Peter is saying to these Jewish believers, he's saying, to your godliness, add affection. You know, Peter was Jewish. He was raised Jewish. And Peter would run into these Pharisees and these Sadducees, and they were so godly. They would never break the law. They were also some of the cruelest people around. You see, we need to understand that God is holy and that we can become partakers of his divine nature. When we know what God is like or who God is, we can become partakers of his divine nature by faith. But we also need to realize that in God's holiness, he has brotherly kindness. He has a deep and abiding affection for you. And then Peter closes verse number 7 by saying this: love. Love. Now, some people say now love encapsulates all of these things. You know what? I believe that these things are so entwined within each other that you can't divide them. But this word love is the Greek word agape. And the Greek word agape means an unconditional love, an unconditional self-sacrificing type of love. Now, I've heard people say, well, agape love, that's God's kind of love, and that's absolutely true. But what kind of love is that? God gave himself. He gave his only begotten Son to redeem us in our unworthiness, in our sin. God gave his Son. And so Peter ends this teaching, and actually doesn't end it in verse number 8. We're going to continue with, and it's going to bless you. But he ends this part by just saying this word love. You see, God's character is a character of unconditional, self-sacrificing type of love. And when we receive the promises of God, we begin to become partakers of that divine nature. And what is that divine nature? That divine nature is to give of ourselves in a self-sacrificing, unconditional type of love. I hope that this has opened your eyes today. And Lord, I thank you that by the Spirit of God, the people that are listening to this podcast, that their eyes are being opened to the vastness of your nature, but also that their eyes are being opened to them taking on your nature by faith. Lord, help them to become partakers of your divine nature. Amen.